Notice, in accordance with the new copper regulations, this episode of Quoth the Raven is intended for ages 16 and up. While some of the content we may feature is kid-friendly, the context of the episodes will address adults and inform them of said content within the research as consumers in service of their youth. In other words, parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, teachers, librarians, etc. There is always the possibility of adult language present on the episode as well, rated TV 16 and up. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Quoth the Raven. I'm the host, Louis Bright Raven, 28-year veteran of comic, science fiction, fantasy, horror, role-playing games, as a writer, illustrator, editor, publisher, talent scout. I've done a lot of stuff, if you haven't heard. And it's our Monday night review show. Normally we do it earlier in the day. Today we had a rough week because I was supposed to have someone come and do some work on our air conditioning unit, heater units, and they were 5 hours late and took 2 hours to do what should have taken about half an hour. So it was not fun. So we'll just hopefully get on through with this, okay? That being said, let's go ahead and get some reviews. We're going to start with CANTO 2, The Hollow Men. Number 5. For $3.99 by IDW Publishing. Writer is David Boer. Artist is Drew Zucker with colorist Vittorio Astone. Genre is fantasy. It was released last week, February 2nd. What it's about is Kanto has made his way up the Yellow Mountain and into the Valley of the Lion-Hearted, met the sorceress, and must now agree to bear the burden of the shrouded man's heart within him to break the curse upon his clockwork people. As he does this, he becomes a target for the shrouded man will destroy his own heart and destroy all love and hope in the world. Kanto also reverses the curse on the elf Alora's people who helped him in the earlier part of the storyline, thus concluding this arc and miniseries. But now he must prepare for the final conflict with the Shrouded Man in the next miniseries, which will be out in April. This series is recommended for all ages, rated 4 out of 5 stars. Let's take a look at some of the artwork. This is 2 of the Clockwork Men. They're kind of teasing him from now that he's returned. Like, oh yeah, you went and did all this stuff without us, type thing. And he's like, but you have to understand, I had to do this on my own. And it's like, we're kidding. And then he explains that they still have to fight and beat the Shrouded Man anyway. And then this is where he goes back to Alora's village, where all the villagers have been turned into like scarecrows earlier in the storyline, and he reverses them back to human. And she gets reunited with her family. All in all, quite a good story. I compare this as, well, I don't want to compare, I shouldn't say compare. For those of you who enjoy Bone or, oh geez, I'm trying to think what the other one was. Usagi Yojimbo, stuff that's really good all ages material. This is right in that wheelhouse. I think that most kids will enjoy this. Our next book is Chained to the Grave #1, $3.99 from IDW Publishing. Writers are Andy Eschenbach and Brian Lovell. Artist is Kate Sharon. The genre is dark fantasy and western. Released last week, February 2nd. And what it's about: Roy Mason has been raised from the dead by his wife and a Native American Indian woman after having been murdered by robbers whom he stole money from and hid the money. Now he tries to get his family to safety before his killers return, only to learn his wife only raised him to make him divulge the whereabouts of the missing loot. And so now he and the Native American witch and his 2 small children are on the run. It's a weird story, And it's a bit disjointed in places, but that might be in design in correlation to the lead character's understanding of events. But there's also stuff that doesn't quite make sense. For example, the kids are fully accepting that their dad's a zombie, for example. Artistically, it's quite interesting, particularly the bright color palettes in different parts of the story. I'm not sure what artist Kate Sharon's background is. This is my first time seeing her work, to my knowledge, but it has a very animation studio storyboard feel to the work, particularly in action sequences. This is definitely a mature reader's book. There's lots of adult language, a lead into sex scene interrupted by the kids. Yes, the wife is going to have sex with her zombie husband. It's quite. It's definitely keep the kids away from this one, even though the art might be appealing to kids. It's recommended for mature readers, and I give it a rating of 3 out of 5 stars. And this is him rising up from out of the grave, and that's his wife waiting for him, basically, to come in. And you can see he's got, like, for some reason, he's got to be chained to this tombstone and lug it around everywhere. I'm not exactly sure why. They haven't explained it. And then, here we go. Here's the scene I'm trying to tell you about. She's basically stripping him down and ready to just, go right down on him. And yeah. So it probably was better I did this in the 11 o'clock hour, I guess, right? But yeah, it's an interesting art and storyline. And this is the flashback explaining where he and his brother, their uncle, who's a priest, decided to take the loot and away from the robbers, and the robbers are chasing them. And the head of the robbers is the guy that gets shot in the side of the cheek there in the second panel on the right. So he's explaining, this is basically him explaining why he died to the kids. But overall, it's still quite the interesting story. Our next book is Deep Beyond, number 1, $3.99 from Image Comics. Writers are Mirka Andolfo and David Goy. The artist is Andrea Boccardo. The colorist is Barbara Nocenzo. The genre is science fiction. Released last week, February 2nd. And what it's about: in a polluted future Earth, Dr. Paul Bailey believes his ex-wife Pam has been trapped or possibly killed on a secret underwater mission. He is confronted by Pam's twin sister, who abducts him, and together they're going to go find and rescue her. But enemies, in other words, the government, have other plans. Meanwhile, bioterrorists are also trying to take out the elite of the protected society that lives in protected areas away from the messed up Earth. Overall, it's a decent enough first issue. I do hope they do a bit more world building in number 2, and not just character reactions, and explain a little bit more of how the world is, the way it is. But I suspect that they're going to be more action oriented in the second episode or second issue. Recommended for ages 16 and up, and rated 3.5 stars out of 5. Let's take a look at the art. This is where the president's son goes to a special party to some female friend of his, and they attack, and they open up the upstairs or overhead glass that exposes them to the outside poison gas and stuff, while these other people are attacking back and forth, trying to murder everybody. I'm not exactly sure if the president's son survived this or not, but Bailey is called in afterwards to basically take a look at the bodies and stuff like that, and then he gets told about his wife being missing, or ex-wife being missing, rather. And then he's on his own doing something else, and this is when his twin sister and her associate have a gun to his head and are abducting him. and she takes off her helmet, and then he realizes that it looks, basically a twin. And then they cut to when the twin is trapped in a sub, and as you can see, she is infected with something, but we don't know exactly what. But she's trapped in a submarine with some sort of infection, and they're going to go try and find her and save her. And they go out into the outside in pressure suits, out into the outside unprotected Earth, and they're going to get in this vehicle, this tumbler vehicle, when something attacks them at the end of the thing, and that's where they leave it. The monsters attack them, rather, not something. Our next book is ENGINEWARD number 7, $3.99. Vault Comix is the publisher. Writer is George Mann. Artist is Joe Eisma. The colorist is Michael Garland. The genre is science fiction fantasy, and it was released last week, February 2nd. And what it's about, well, what is it about? What is it with all these comics with their revolution conspiracies ruling within the ruling bodies of government, trying to destroy one another and the civilization around them lately? You'll understand why I said this, because the next book I review will also have that same theme. I just happen to have them reversed, but when I did the write-ups. Anyway, this revolution is in full swing, and Capricorn, who's the being on the cover, threatens Virgo that he will reveal her and Sagittarius's plans to the rest of the Celestials, which is this fraudulent group of pseudo alien gods or whatever that are ruling over a broken Earth, if he's not included in their in the new ruling body. Meanwhile, our human travelers, who are being chased by Gemini and others, have managed to get further on their trek to find a human seed which will prove the Celestials are false gods and theoretically stop the tyranny of the Celestials, because then the humans will say, well, you're not real, we don't have to follow you, and we can, be our own people. And of course, what ends up happening? Well, Virgo murders Capricorn and leaves his corpse in the village square for the humans to see, which is supposed to freak out all the villagers, only at this point the village council knows the Celestials are frauds already, and they just can't prove it. Now, to be honest, the story is getting a little weak, 7 issues in. The villagers know the Celestials are fraud, then whatever the Celestials' mind game is wouldn't work, shouldn't work. If the Celestials want to stop our adventuring crew, then the smart play would simply be to hold the villagers hostage until the adventurers surrender a MacGuffin, which is the human seed. So I'm kind of losing my interest in the story at this point. Another thing I found odd about this book was that it felt light, as though pages were missing. And when I counted them, technically that's accurate. The book is only 20 pages. However, there are no ad pages, so you're still getting the same number of story pages as you would a regular 24 to 32-page comic. I thought this was interesting because while it may be cheaper to produce the book with fewer pages, the extra pages traditionally are ad space that, if you're selling the space properly, offsets the cost of your printing more so than if you just printed fewer pages. Now, I realize that's inside stuff, inside baseball, inside comic creating that most people, maybe most fans, don't care about. But I think it's important that you pay attention to that, because if publishers start doing this on the regular, and fandom starts whining about paying more money for less story because they don't realize there's less pages, they get less pages, they think they're getting less story, that's going to happen. If this happens to become a trend, there's going to be a lot of fans who are going to complain. So I'm giving you a heads up. If that starts happening and you hear fans complain, tell them to count the number of story pages back and forth. Anyway, this book is pretty much a middle-of-the-road book. It's recommended for 16 up. It's 3 out of 5 stars. And here's where Capricorn confronts Virgo. And he basically, threatens her to let him in on their plan, or else he lets everybody know. And she's just kind of like, okay, I'll see to it. This is where the travelers get through a certain part and they're still looking for the seed. Um, and they know that they're still being followed by Gemini and the others. And so they can't stop. They cut to the village and you need to come out to the market, market village square. And there's the body of the dead Capricorn in the middle of their village square, which, is supposed to freak out everybody in the village. And then that's the cover for next issue. Our next book is Far Sector number 10 by DC Comics, $3.99. Writer is N.K. Jemisin. Artist is Jamal Campbell. The genre is science fiction, political intrigue, and superhero. Released February 2nd. And what it's about, well, the grand reveal of the conspiracy. See what I mean about everything going on in comics. And who is behind it is presented in this issue as the counselor Marth confesses his involvement to Joe Moline, that's the Green Lantern character. And it is shown that the council has no intent to allow for a proper election by the citizens of the city enduring. Basically, this issue is the spell out everything catch-up issue that explains all the clues from the previous issues while still trying to give an audience the plot twist at the end of the issue to keep you engaged for the final act. The problem is we already know what the final act's going to be, and that is Joe will be kicking ass and taking down the council's corruption in their army, and that the final issue, number 12, will then be the aftermath and setting up whatever they're going to set up as a government after she's taken out the council. The specifics thereof may or may not be something audiences are waiting with bated breath for as a result. Still, as formulaic as the pacing of the book may be, Jemisin is doing it well enough to make most readers at least interested enough to finish. There's a lot of writers whom I would have given up and walked away from before now. Whether it was this kind of story or just in general, there's a lot of writers. I've gone. If you've heard my reviews in recent weeks, you've heard examples of me saying where I'm burned out and don't really care about these books. I'm just reading them just to get them through the arc or get them through the finish the series. Anyway, this is a book that's intended for mature readers. There's some language. There's some other issues here that is certainly a 16 to 17 and up type book. Rating is 3.5 stars because it's not as good as previous issues have been, but then again, like I said, this is kind of a reveal and rehash episode issue of the storyline. This is Joe basically talking to Counselor Marth, and he's she's like spelling it all out of what's going on, and he's like, "Yep, I agree, correct, you got everything right." I've and she's like, "Well, okay, so you admit to all this, so what the bleep? Yeah, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I figured if you understood what was going on, you'd already understand why I was doing it." So he's explaining it all as to why. And there's some, if you have read the whole story in context, you'll get everything that's here and makes sense. But, it's something that you kind of have to have been following the story to really get, even though it is spelled out in this issue. I don't know if you'll get everything you're supposed to unless you've read the whole series. Anyway, they've arrested Marth now that he's admitted to things. And he explains who the new regime that's going to try and take over power is. And he says, well, now they're about to make their move. And they're like, what move? And this is one of his, not Moline, but one of the other people's work. And of course, the city enduring, it just become a dictatorship, and the army of that protects, all their army is now basically turned on the city. And that's how they leave it. Our next books are Planet Comics Volume 1 and 2 at $19.99 each. The publisher is PS Art Books. There's various creators. The genre is science fiction and superhero. What it's about, these 2 volumes represent, or rather reprint, the first 6 issues of Planet Comics from 1940. The stories are kind of basic as is the art. Very little of the interior work is comparable to the cover level quality of the cover art, in my opinion. But one does have to keep in mind that the era that these were made and how comics were produced and what printing was like in that era. These books are basically scans from the comics, not original art. And so this is somewhat to be expected, given how old the material is. A lot of the original art is probably long gone or deteriorated to the point where it couldn't have been scanned anyway. Given the era it's from, it's above average stuff, even if the stories come across as basic and outmoded for today's audiences. However, I'd recommend it more for people who are really comic history buffs or fans who are interested in the golden age of comics rather than modern audiences. I don't think a lot of modern audiences will appreciate that as much. I give it a 4 out of 5 star rating. I couldn't scan it. Well, I do have the books here. And this is volume 1. And yes, that's a heck of a name for the character, Spurt Hammond. But you can kind of see. And they're very quick reads. I read through both of these books over the span of an hour. Each one has 6 issues of about 3 to 8 stories per issue. So there's like 48 short stories in each one. Again, for stuff that was produced in 1940, it's not bad. Not bad at all. And the production for this book isn't bad, given that these are scans of old comics. Different artists. Another artist yet. So, that's pretty much what you get there. This one has issues 1 through 3, and some of the artists are George Tuska, Bob Powell, Fletcher Hanks, Henry Kiefer, Dick Briefer, Ken Jackson, Alex Bloom. So these names might not mean a whole lot to people unless you are a golden age person who knows that era of talent. It's not like most people would know who George Tuska is because he did work at Marvel later on, all the way up through like the early 70s. But I don't know if people know who Dick Briefer is or Henry Kiefer or some of these other guys. Okay, our next books for review is Resonant number 7 for $3.99. Publisher is Vols Comics. Writers David Andrew with artist Skylar Partridge and colorist Jason Worthy. This genre science fiction horror. It was released February 2nd, 2021. And what it's about, Ty, the older son that had left the house and left his younger sister and brother behind, makes it back to his family's house and his siblings, but he knows that he has to get them out of there because the Maw, that's the crazy cult people, the Maw's the leader, and his minions are coming and they have to get away. Only with Beck and Steph's health issues. Beck is one-legged and on crutches, and Steph has breathing issues and is in a wheelchair. they're really not able to. Ty's wife, and I put that in quotations, he was technically sort of pseudo married in an earlier issue to a young girl named Sarah. She arrives with a horse, and so the four of them manage to load a cart with their necessities and get away from the crazies just as they arrive. Only a new resonant wave hits everybody, which drives Ty temporarily nuts from the sound, and he gets like a blood rage, and he attacks and kills one of the people chasing them out of his enragement. But ultimately, when the resonance stops and he gets over it, he's horrified by what he's done, but ultimately the kids escape. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, their father Pax is on a ship in the middle of rough seas, as you can see from the cover, in the middle of it, and it gets wrecked. The ship gets wrecked by a massive tidal wave with, as yet, seemingly no survivors. Very effective cover art, which hints at this scene in the comic. We really don't know what's going to happen next with either pair. The kids are now trying to get to their mother, who I thought was dead. But according to Becca, they're going to go live with their mom in the meantime, so I don't know. The story's okay. It's an improvement over the last issue, but the truth is I can't seem to stay engaged or interested in the story. Perhaps, I just need to read it from the beginning and reread it as a whole. I'm not sure. But to me, it's just an average comic. I don't know. I just think there could be more to it. I don't know. It's well done, but I think it's maybe there's too many of these type of books. It's this post-apocalyptic survivalist type stuff. I think there's just too many of that type of comic out there maybe right now. Anyway, it's recommended for 16 and up, rated 3 out of 5 stars. Let's take a look at some of the art. This is where Ty gets back to the house. You can see barely over here. I don't know if you can see it or not. On the porch, you can see Steph's wheelchair tipped over. But anyway, he gets into the room, and Beck's got a shotgun, and he's like, "What are you pointing a gun at me for?" And that's because she just fought off a bear. But anyway, they agree they got to get out of there, and that's when Sarah arrives and the horse, and then she tells them, "Okay, we're going to get out of here." And as you can see, she's on those 2 braces with only 1 leg. Let's go back a little bit. I kind of look at her standing there with no braces holding her up with a shotgun. I don't know what's holding her up, because I mean, if she's going to hold a shotgun and fire it, she's got nothing holding her up. She's got 1 leg. She's just going to get blown backwards. But who am I, right? But anyway, it is what it is. But anyway, she tells them they're going to stay with mom. Our next book is SOULSTREAM #1. This is a one-shot preview book for $1.99 from Scout Comics under their Scoot imprint. The writer and illustrator is Seda Wolf. The genre is fantasy, and it was released last week, February 2nd. Siblings Marcus and Marie are hiking in the woods when they come across what appears to be a fantastical ancient temple. Upon entering it, they find a small chest with 2 keys and a note. Marie reads the note and thus opens a portal to another dimension. Marcus then goes to the portal, which Marie frantically follows him, because that's what curious kids and teenagers do, of course. Transported to the other side, in this other dimension, Marie meets a water goddess and is given a bracelet that will give her powers over the element of water, while 2 other bracelets they saw leave into their world when they opened the portal. So the water goddess tells them they need to seek out 2 suitable parties for those other bracelets, and then return to this dimension to battle the evil forces that have taken over this other world. And of course, the enemy has been keeping tabs on the newly arrived teens, and the scout tracks them and separates them. Marcus is about to be killed by the scout when Marie finally gets her powers to work and sweeps the enemy away with a tidal wave, but it makes her so weak that she passes out. Marcus takes her and flees back through the portal to our world, only he left behind one of the keys to the portal, so now the enemy has the key and can, of course, pass through to our side. End of issue. This is just a preview issue, as I said, to what will be a full-length trade paperback, and this is something that Scout has been wanting to do, not just with the kid. This is the All Ages group, Scoot Imprint. They've been doing this a lot with their books, where you just get to see the first issue really cheap, and then you buy the trade later. If I realized that's what this was, I probably wouldn't have bought it. Had I remembered it was going to be a trade instead of single issues. Even though, this is the way it is. That having been said, the preview is well done. The creator is young. She's only 17 years old. And this is her first published work that I'm aware of. There's plenty of room for improvement, but I can't see what Scout saw in her and why they're investing in her. Recommended for all ages, and it's 3 out of 5 stars. Here's the work. It's kind of got that sort of manga, but not manga. It's like a Mara manga type look going on. Like I said, they kind of see this weird temple, and to me, if it's there as they're just hiking, why didn't anybody else see this first? I don't know, but it's just there. This is where they find the mini chest, and then there's the 2 keys that are portal keys to get to the other dimension, and the little note. And she reads it, and she yells it out, and oh, that was just so dramatic of you, with your kind of role playing type personality thing going on. And then, of course, because she said it, the portal does open. And then you see the 2 bracelets leave. And she's trying to keep him from going in, but he goes on his own, and then she follows. I'm not going to show you what happens after that. The next book is Stairway Anthology, $14.99. Top Cow Image Comics is a publisher. Various writers and artists. The genre is science fiction and fantasy. It was released in October of last year. It's just been one of those books that I'd forgotten. I'd meaning to get around to reading and reviewing. I just hadn't. What it's about is this is a collection of 10 different short stories. Some are self-contained, some are more of an introduction to a larger tale. I don't really have time to go through each individual story. Most of the books were actual story ideas, were actually introductory tales, preview tales. And I would like to see more of them, and I'm really kind of annoyed that Top Cow seemingly doesn't have any intention to follow through on this. The way the book's prologue and preamble says, it's just like this is the stuff in introduction. There's not going to be more. If you want to read it, you'll have to go hope that the other guys crowdfund or whatever. Overall, I would say that several of the stories would make interesting series in their own right. Most of them are above average, and there isn't a bad story in the bunch, which is uncommon for an anthology. There's usually at least one story I don't really care for. Rated for ages 16 and up, 4 out of 5 stars. Again, I'm not going to go and show a bunch of art from different stories. I don't think it's fair to show some and not all. So if someone wants to know more about that one, they can email me and let me know. Mm-hmm. The next book is They Fell from the Sky #1, $3.99 from Mad Cave Studios. Writer is Liesl Buenaventura. The artist is Xavier Terrega. The colorist is DJ Chavis with Barry Hall as his assistant. Genre is science fiction, released February 2nd, 2021. Well, it's about Tommy is a Hispanic youth. His age could be junior high or possibly a freshman in high school. It's not particularly clear. Who's into science fiction and comics with his two buddies. He gets picked on in school, gets in a fight with the school bully, gets in an argument with his father over the fact that he doesn't want to be a farmer like him. Typical teen angst. Then he discovers an alien craft that has crash landed near his home and has first contact with an alien that looks like a cartoony animal. Basically, this is very much an ET type story. It's so ET, it's not funny. It's so much so that I'm tempted to go watch the movie again, borrow it from a library on DVD or something, just to see how similar it is, because it screams ET at me. So it's certainly not the most original comic. The artwork is decent. The story, well, there's some cultural slurs in the book, and maybe they're appropriate on one level, but in other contexts of the story, they're absolutely not appropriate. I don't buy into the comic shop scene incident. If the bully is beating up an old man outside the store and then shoves Tommy into a comics rack when Tommy challenges him inside the store, neither the store owner should be telling the sheriff what the hell's going on or the old man is. One of the two. There's no way that Tommy and his friends get the brunt of the race of sheriff's attitude. If the bully kid's dad is a criminal in jail, as Tommy points out, then the sheriff should already be assuming that the bully kid is in the wrong here. Yes? So to me, that was not a very well thought out scene, in my opinion. It bothers me. It took me out of the story completely, especially the cultural slur. The sheriff calls the kids beaners. And for those of you who don't know what beaners are, that is a racial slur towards Mexican and Hispanic people who are farmers, basically. I really do want to give the book a higher rating than I'm giving it, but the lack of uniqueness and the flaws in the writing and that kind of racist tone that really doesn't need to be there to get the point across just don't allow for a higher rating I'm going to give it. It's a fun enough book, and I will continue reading it for another issue or two and hope that the writing improves. Recommended for ages 13 and up. I give it 2.5 stars because of the low writing. Here's some of the artwork. This is the scene. You can see the bully is beating up on the old man outside, and he's like, "We got to help him." Well, we can't do that. He's an adult. He can take care of himself. And he tries to tell the guy, the kid who's the clerk at the store, the owner of the store, doesn't care if it's happening inside the store. He doesn't care. So he goes out and challenges him, and the reason he beats everybody up is because the only future you have to look forward to is inside a jail cell, just like your dad. And then, the guy attacks him, and the kid's, he charges him and pushes him through a spinner rack. And there's the cop. And, here's the, like I said, why doesn't the clerk speak up and say something? And then it says, "You damn beaners don't have a lick of respect for a man's property," blah, 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 blah. And that really just showed me a lack of respect. Now, there might be some context for this because, after all, he's going to find the alien later. And if he's a racist prick of a cop, he might be a xenophobic anti-alien guy. So maybe there's a precondition here is just trying to show the lack of character of the sheriff. I don't know, but it really does bother me. I don't think it, for the type of book it's supposed to be, I don't think it's really needed to be there. And then later on in the story, he discovers the alien who's been wounded in the leg, and it's a cute little, I don't know, it's just an interesting design, cartoon animal type alien. And he's losing blood, so he passes out eventually. And of course, here we go. Here's the cover to the next issue, and here he is riding a bike with the little guy in the basket, and there you go with the ET in the basket thing too. So it's like it just kind of really spells out that kind of a thing for me. I just oh well. Um, again, I'm giving it 2.5 because of a few specific things. And I think maybe I'm being too harsh. I don't know, but hopefully people understand why I'm giving it that lower rating. Don't dismiss the book just because I'm giving it a 2.5. It is an enjoyable comic for what it is. Our next book is What If We Were, or What If We Were, $14.95. Publisher is Top Shelf Productions. Writer, artist is Axel Lenore. That's their new name. The writer is a transgender, male to female. The genre is coming of age teen fantasy, released in December of 2020, and what it's about two teenage girls that have been best friends since childhood are about to enter young adulthood of a special game between them. What if we were? This is a game where one of the girls says a one-word topic, and the other one has to think up what it would be like to be that profession or thing or animal or what have you. Only one of the girls is a lesbian and crushing on a third girl whom she's too scared to talk to. As it turns out, the third girl is also a lesbian and is crushing on her as well, so the straight friend hooks them up and then sort of regrets it because now she thinks she's going to lose her best friend to the new girl. It's mostly a cute but predictable story with a few laugh out loud moments. Lenore does a respectable job of experimenting with different art styles while keeping a consistent visual range and narrative throughout the book. In other words, what I mean is when she deviates the art style, she prefers she or her pronouns. It's in service to the story and then goes back to the regular style when necessary. The creator also does a nice job of balancing the narrative of the different relationships between Nathalie, that's the long-haired redhead girl on the cover, and the lesbian best friend. Marie, that's the one above her, and that's the other best friend. And Jane, who appears on the back cover, who with the imaginary game elements. The book could very easily have been just delved more into the game storyline to the point where it would have overwhelmed the story of the girls' personal relationships. The one thing I kind of don't like is that Natalie looks like she's the sexy, confident, cooler than cool girl on the cover, while the other two girls seem more like who would be the best friends design-wise. The two nerdy girls, basically, where in reality in the story it's Jane who's supposed to be the cool one and Natalie is this tall, geeky, nerdy girl who has major self-esteem issues. And it kind of belies the characters in that respect. I kind of wish that Jane had been the one more presented as the more I don't know, the hot one of the group. I don't know. But anyway, it's recommended for ages 16 and up, and it's 4 out of 5 stars. Just give me a second. Here we are. This is the book. And then as you can see, there's the Jane who's supposed to be the hot cool girl, and it's just this kind of, if you kind of look at her, the eye wide, like what just blew us away, and then there's Marie with, hey, what just blew us away, and then you got the long blowing flowing hair, super goddess type person, and then when you kind of go inside, that's really not what Natalie looks like. In most of the story, she looks kind of like this frumpy, ponytailed, gawky, tall girl. So it's kind of interesting in that respect. But overall, the story's not bad, though. I have no problem with that. All in all, here's some of their imaginary stories. What if we were orcs? What if we were goblins? What if we were dragons? What if we were dwarves? Natalie hates it whenever they have beards and they get beards often. Stuff like that. This is what they were supposedly dressed as at different ages in Halloween. I got in trouble because she dressed as Catwoman and Poison Ivy for Halloween one year in high school. They got kicked out. So anyway, it's not bad. I would certainly give it to an older reader, who might be more I don't know. It's not necessarily for LGBTQs. I mean, obviously the characters are, at least two of them. Black Girl Marie is not, but at least in this edition, I wouldn't say that sexuality is a big issue. It's just that they're aware that they're into girls and they have their first date and stuff like that. And there's a kiss at the end of the story, but it's not really anything that's, overtly sexual or anything like that. And I don't think that the author intends to do that in future editions of the storyline, assuming they continue to do the series. And that pretty much concludes our reviews for Monday. Now, there were a few books I was supposed to review today that I didn't get to because of all the messing around with all these other bozos. So on Wednesday, we will review Stargazer 4 and 5 and Lonely Receiver 4 and 5. And we will review Monkey Fighting Robots, which I just got, the summer edition of 2020 and the winter edition of 2021. Just got those last Friday. Haven't really read them yet. There's also two smaller books that go with those. Those are the two bigger books, but they're smaller edition books. There's the Tales of Monkeys Fighting Robots. And so I'll be reviewing those on Wednesday, as well as telling you what I got from the comic shop this week. Okay? And hopefully that'll be at a reasonable hour. I'm hoping to do it around 4 to 5:30 like I normally do. We don't have any unforeseen circumstances. Again, I do apologize for being so late this week. So if you guys want to contact me, there is something I do want to know from you guys. You notice that I've been starting the reviews with the yellow text instead of red like I've done for quite a while. I want to know, does the yellow text make it easier for you guys to read the screen rather than the red, or would you prefer the red? I think the yellow is easier to read, but I want to know what fans think, so let me know, okay? You can let me know either in the posts on Facebook or in YouTube, or you can contact me and let me know via Facebook, Lewis.BrightRaven, at Twitter at LewisBrightRaven2, on YouTube at QuothRaven, LewisBrightRaven, Gmail, QuothRavenLBR72 at gmail.com, or at Yahoo via LewisBrightRaven at yahoo.com. You can also take a look at some of my artwork if you want at deviantart.com/BrightRaven. It's also artwork on my Facebook page. Mondays, we have our usual comics news and reviews. I haven't really been keeping up with the news lately. When I do see on the news, it's usually negative, and I just don't want to be that negative person anymore on this stuff. Got enough stuff to talk about otherwise. Wednesdays is what did you get this week normally. We just do a quick rundown of what stuff I bought. I usually don't have time to read it before I get on the line on Wednesdays, but we'll have some. We're going to try and do some reviews every Wednesday as well. Not as many reviews as we do on Monday, just to get caught up because I've got a long backlog of stuff I haven't read. Thursday nights at 9 p.m. is our roundtable talk, guest night with topics. Not sure who our guest is just yet. Hopefully we'll have that squared away. And then Fridays at 9 is genre night. Each week is a different genre, sometimes with guests. This week our genre is fantasy. And so I will thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Until then, have a pleasant night, and we'll see you next time.